It's great when God rocks up in power, I just want to welcome Pastor Noddy Sharma, is that how you pronounce it? Sharma? Awesome. From OM Ministries, and we were just in the service before. And just to put it back into perspective, why we do these talks is it's because you can only say so much from a certain perspective and in a certain way through a sermon. And a conversation, you can sort of just open it up a bit more, just be a bit more personal, a bit more relatable, and sort of delve deep into what he sort of said in his sermon. And I find that I'm impacted more by the person than the actual sermons. I don't know about you, but it's great when you actually meet a guy who actually lives out the gospel. Hey, you know what I mean? Actually takes it seriously, like he said, and just lives it. So thank you heaps for doing this. Really, really appreciate it. Welcome him tonight. Cool. I tend to start these things off by asking, what do you do for fun? What's your day off look like?
Awesome question. Okay, so my days off, when I'm not spending it with my wife and my little boy, I ride motorbikes. So I often go down to racetracks, and we hire it out for a couple of days, and I spend my time trying to break my own personal best record around Phillip Island Raceway.
I did not expect that at all.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, hey?
Is it? So hang on, I'm a noob at this. Is it like on the road, or is it like dirt bikes? Or?
No, it's like a race bike. You want to see a photo?
Yeah, sure. Sure, I want a photo.
Yeah, because it's probably, they say a picture says 1,000 words, right? So, okay, so I'm not sure whether you can see this, but anyway, that's me around Phillip Island.
Everyone can see it. I can't see it. What the heck? Yeah. Nah, you Google image that, didn't you? Surely. No, that's awesome.
That's me.
That's so good.
Yeah. So I do that during summer.
Yeah.
Because during the rain it's no good and it's just horrible. And then during winter I like to snowboard. So it's pretty cool, especially in the line of work I'm in. I get to travel a fair bit, and so I try and find as many cool places to snowboard as I can. Yep. And so this year I spent 4 days in Colorado at 9,428 feet, and Crested Butte's just nuts, and I clocked over 86 kilometres an hour on my snowboard and almost got kicked off the mountain.
There we go.
Yeah, so
no injuries thus far?
No injuries thus far. Praise the Lord.
Godly man. Crazy. Coolest place you've been? Because you've travelled all over the world, I'm assuming, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, coolest
Adelaide?
Place I've been. Yeah, Adelaide.
Murray Bridge?
For sure.
Oh, okay.
Coolest place I've been? It's such a hard question to answer because there are a lot of cool places in this world. I think I'm the sort of person that I'm usually always in the moment. So it's probably in the stuff that I've just done recently. I was pretty impacted recently in Nepal. So there after the earthquake, we raised over $150,000 US dollars and sent it over there for rehabilitation stuff. And one of the things that I got to spend some time in is it was in a camp site that we'd set up for a group of people, and it's nuts. Until you're over there and you experience just how crazy life is for some of these people, you don't realise it, how blessed we really are. But there's a group of people, 80 families, so there's actually it's probably more like 300 people in this community of 80 families, and they're living literally on the side of a mountain, and they lost everything through one of the aftermaths of the earthquake. Like the whole lot just went. And so they were completely displaced, and they lost more than half the people count in their village was killed. So which means multiple families, every family was impacted, and multiple families had up to 3 people in their family that were killed. And actually sitting with this group of villagers, we'd found them a new place to live. We'd tried to upskill them in as well areas. We'd placed in a couple of teachers there to help them understand the dialect that was in the region, as well as learn a new skill to be able to engage in society where we'd place them until their home could be rebuilt. I walked into that place expecting, it's beautiful, but expecting to just be struck by the grief that was there, and instead was met with a surprise of hope. And I think that Jesus made that place beautiful for me, because the 2 ladies that we placed in this place were full-blown Christians, and they actually knew the dialect of where this village was from, and they were able to speak into the life and actually minister in the midst of the grief and pray for people with their permission. And Jesus turned up in the place, and the village, the leader of the village, of the spiritual guys, all became Christians, started following Jesus. And I was met with joy that was completely unexpected in the midst of tragic grief and pain. And I'll show you one more photo if I can. So this could take me a while to find because I've got way too many photos.
Selfies or?
Yeah, selfies.
Yeah.
Actually, selfies, right, good. I can find it easily through that way. So this guy, quite literally, when I met him, was he blew me away with his smile. And I'll show you why. So this is the chief of the village who should never have even remotely had a smile on his face, but because he'd encountered Jesus, this was him. So he'd lost multiple people through his village, and just huge smile. Toothless, mind you, but huge smile on his face. So, it's not so much places I've been, but the people I encounter and what Jesus is up to in the place that...
Yeah, that's crazy. I'll said to you before, but I love how you're just so real. Because the media is not necessarily... doesn't necessarily hide the fact that there's poverty in the world. We see compassion. We do stuff in Cambodia. Poverty. We kind of have that picture of that kid or whatever who's really skinny, who's starving, who doesn't have anywhere to stay or homeless or whatever the case may be. We see it, but I don't know about you, but because of the world that we're in isn't necessarily that world, we tend to get desensitized to it. Or the other extreme is that I've seen as well is people get so heartbroken by it that they almost become irrelevant, unrelatable to the people that are in their world. So I've just got to go and overseas do the thing and that's it. And, they're almost awkward to talk to because they're on the other side of it. How do you, because the thing is your heart is touched by this stuff that's going on, but your heart isn't wrecked. You're still relevant. You're a normal dude, but yet you don't become decent. You kind of, it's naughty, but no, but do you know what I'm saying though? You're relevant, but you're not desensitized to the reality that is, we are living in a world that has so much need. And for us as receivers of the gospel, our mandate, our obligation, it's an obligation, is to go and meet those needs in Jesus' name and spread the gospel. How do you find that balance? Because you're living in it, your heart's touched, but it's not wrecked. How do you do that?
So it's a hard one, right? Because there's times that I totally am wrecked, and there's times that I'll see something, I'll turn up in a place, and I'll just be heartbroken and I'll just spend days weeping, But I think the reality is this, is that we kind of think to ourselves at times that when we meet Jesus, we almost have to be a little bit freaky. And the truth of that is we actually don't. We can be really normal people, and that's who he's created us to be. The fact that we know the one that is a little bit freaky, it doesn't mean that we need to keep pointing to that. We can actually just normalise the things of Jesus in everyday conversation, in the way that you actually interact in work, in the way that you drive your car, in the way that you, are impacted by not just the hard places of this world, but also the true pain that exists right here, wherever God has placed you. And so it's actually learning that our response shouldn't be about the circumstance that we've faced. Our response should be that Jesus is the one that calls us to live life, and he's created something in each one of us that makes us who we are. And so it's how do you celebrate that? How do you live that out wherever you go in a way that continually speaks about the one that set you free with a new sense of reality and is not defined by the things that breaks your heart? So I think that's the thing that we need to be better at as believers of Jesus, is that, we're going to encounter it. I mean, we're in a global age. We're all online. You can touch different parts of the world wherever we are and wherever we find ourselves and see things like that. I mean, case in point, the whole refugee crisis. That image of that little boy drowned on the beach, right? I don't reckon that anyone within the Western culture looked at that and wasn't moved by it. But the point is that the mandate that we have is that we can actually overlay the Jesus story over that whole crisis of humanity around the globe. That actually his followers are normal people that just know the one who sets us free, who brings us life, who offers forgiveness, who can actually transform any situation that we find ourselves in. And literally, we don't need to be the superheroes, we just need to point to the one who is.
Yeah, that's great.
So, you live a life like that and you just end up trying to be a normal guy or girl and That's it.
So for you didn't have to bash down those doors of the opportunities that God has given you. You just sort of just did your thing in the environment that God gave you, and eventually you're leading a movement that you said before you had like 7,000 staff. I just think about that. That's insane. 7,000 staff, not volunteer staff. Like what? Like for you, like you talked about how your father died of cancer, and because you're talking about seeing other people's tragedy. You encountered your own tragedy. And most people use that as an excuse. It's not an excuse, that's a bad way of saying it, but just like those sort of things, people go, you know what, that's my done deal with God. I'm finished. I've got a reason to be bitter. I've got a reason to not press him. But yeah, you use that to now help other people. I find this like, did you find like, when was the moment that you really switched on to the fact that, hey, I can use the pain that I've been through, the stuff that I've been through to actually help other people? When was that moment? Did it switch on instantaneous? Did you have this big God encounter? Like, when did you start going, hang on a second, like, I know God, but now I'm really going to start sharing the gospel and sharing Jesus through the pain I've been through and help those that are actually in pain?
It's funny, I never had a light bulb moment. And even to this day, I wouldn't say that I'm motivated to try and actually minister out of my pain or life experience for the benefit of others. I actually think that it's more about a really simple prayer that I pray wherever I go and whatever I do. God, bring me your appointments. Yeah, wow. So that profoundly changes it, because it's not like I'm looking for it. I'm actually trusting that God's actually going to bring the right people into my sphere. And that somehow, I don't even know what it is at times, what I might be sharing, or a story, or, it's not necessarily out of pain. It could be out of joy. It could be out of something completely different, that God will use that to encounter someone else. Yeah. And that sense of openness to say, God, have your way, that's available to every single one of us. You don't have to have a story that has extreme pain or, something bad that's happened or a chance that's going to give you the opportunity to minister. You actually have everything you need to minister. You just need to be obedient to the appointment that God has for you. So I'm not motivated by the stuff that's happened in my life. In fact, I actually try and die to it. To give you a snapshot, after Dad died, I went off the rails and I lost all my sense of security, and fear gripped my heart and mind to the point the only place I found any sense of freedom was in gangs. And it wasn't too long until I found out that I was really good at fighting. And I was in gangs until the time I was 17 years old, and a huge long story that got me out of it. But basically I went into hiding at that point for 12 months, and all sorts of stuff happened in the midst of it all. A couple of friends got killed, another one went to jail. I had Asian tribes chasing me. Another friend this gang member thought it was me, called 40 blokes. They beat him half to death and stabbed him 47 times on a train station in Melbourne. And it was that I was just like, yeah, that could be me next. I probably need to get out. And God had a guardian angel for me in that place. His name's John. And he was Tongan dude. He was 6'2", 3 of me wide. Like literally the guy was a man mountain. And every time I was getting hammered, he would turn up out of nowhere and just rescue me. And so I went into hiding. And while I was in hiding, that's where I met Jesus. Wow. And just the way that story even unfolded, of him sending someone who was the least person that you would think that would connect with someone who'd seen what I'd seen and been in the space I'd been in, was profound. Like, this guy didn't actually minister from a deep place of hurt. He didn't minister from anything that could actually connect with me. Actually, it was the complete opposite. So he was scrawny, skinny, red hair, white dude, rocked up on my doorstep, and he would not go away, and he was not easily intimidated. Didn't matter that I could fold him in half and probably stuff him in the laundry closet. He just would not go away. And I was like, this guy has every reason to be afraid of me, and he's not. What is going on? And it was in the midst of that I saw the fingerprint of God all over his life, that he wasn't defined by a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. And it's that stuff that you just have no idea how God's going to impact someone else's life for the kingdom because of something true and profound that you have in yours. So it's actually praying that prayer, God, let your fingerprints prevail out of who I am.
Wow, that's crazy. This week, I believe God, just even through hearing that, I really feel like God is going to place something upon this group of people, and so listening to this, to to be a part of someone else's story this week. You're going to understand we are all in our own workplaces, in our universities, in our families. We can all be a part of someone else's story of encountering the gospel. It's just whether we've got eyes to see it, yeah? Often God's going, hey, I'm waiting. I want to use you. I want to bless you. I want to do these things in your life. But are you aware of it? And this way, I just challenge all of us. Like, how can you be a part of someone's story? It might be saying hello to them. It might be inviting them around to your place just to hang out. It might just be sending that encouraging text message. Whatever that might be, honestly, you can be a part of changing someone's eternity. Like, even I need to hear that. Like, just being a part of someone's story that can change someone's family. You know what I mean? Like, it's incredible. And you talked about the video you showed, which was an awesome video. It talked about how the part that got me was like the builder dude with a beard, and he's like, hey, if God's wired you to build, then you build. And it went through all these different guys. Oh, if God's wired you to design, you design. And he went through all these different people who use their gifts for God. In the midst of, your past and pain, and also just in the midst of being in gangs and all this, to create like everything culturally or churchy went against you using your gifts, but yet you use them anyway. I find like sometimes we're a little bit slow off the mark, like, oh, God, use me once this is sorted out and that's sorted out. God, give me the opportunity once I get better at this or that. But yeah, it seemed like for you just started running. Is that correct? How do you just start identifying the fact that you've got something to provide? Because, the odds were against you to some degree in the church world because you were in gangs and all that sort of gear. But now you're on the other side of it. How, just for our guys out in the crowd, like how can they start to activate the gifts that God's given them? Even the ones perhaps they don't know they have.
It's funny, I think, and this is the cool thing about God, is that he already knows what's going on in your life. He already knows your imperfections. He already knows all the sins you struggle with. He already knows that self-talk that happens, if I'm not good enough, see, aren't I this, I've told you this, all the stuff that's unhealthy. He knows that, right? And here is the simple truth that actually I found some language around when I first joined OM. So OM was started by a guy called George Verwer and Dale Roten, and they were 19 when they started it, and they had this crazy dream that the power of the gospel and scripture could change people's lives. And so they just wanted to see it go global. And it did, really quickly. And they bought a ship and they started short-term missions. And they did all these things that the rest of the Christians in the church around them said, you can't do, you're nuts. And you know what? They did it before they figured out it couldn't be done. All right? Because of the fact that they were almost bold enough to just try it. They didn't care. Their failures didn't define them, And if I could leave you with one thing tonight, I would say to you guys, God's equipped you incredibly to actually change the globe. He really has. He's already deposited it in you. And whether you recognise it or not, or whether you admit it or not, or whether you self-talk yourself around it or not, that doesn't change the fact that when he looks at you, he sees it, and he names it, and he calls it into being. And all you need to do is step into it and do it almost without any sense of fear that it's going to fall over. I'm baffled by this story, and I love it. Here's the story of Joseph. Joseph has this dream, and when he's a teenager, and teenagers are so typical, they're cocky enough to tell you about it. So Joseph, you think about it. He has a dream. Yeah, I'm going to rule all you guys, all my brothers. I'm the favourite. And God's given me this thing, and he's told me that everyone's going to bow down to me. Now, a smart person, a young adult would hear that or have that dream, and they wouldn't tell a soul. You'd just be like, yeah, not going there. That's not going to be received well. But a young person will go, yeah, guess what? You're going to bow down to me. Now, here's the thing. Joseph did it, and he ends up in slavery, and he ends up in the wilderness, and he must have died to that dream 1,000 times and regretted it every moment of the way. But it was part of the plan that God had for him to actually bring it to fruition. It took 30 years for it to come true. Now, here is the deal. God has given you a vision over your life, and whether you admit it or not, there is something that in your heart of hearts that he's equipped you, he's given you, he's calling you to, but you haven't been able to speak it out. And almost you need to find your inner child, your inner youth again, and actually be able to speak it back into existence. Tell a person that this is going to happen, and then step into it. It's not cockiness, it's not pride, it's actually being able to step into the reality that God's given you. It may take ages. But it doesn't matter. It's not the end result. It's that you're willing to step into it.
So good. Well, thanks heaps for your time. I really appreciate it. Did you want to say one more thing about young adults? We talked, because he used to run a young adults ministry. Crazy. And did you lead worship as well?
Oh, I didn't lead. I didn't lead worship.
Okay.
I was a worship pastor and young adults pastor. So I worked in the church for like 14 years or something. And so I was just saying that it's a good combo. I had lots of other stuff that I ended up doing. But for some strange reason, the two things that sat in my portfolio for the entire church ministry time was youth and young adults. Was worship and young adults. So I had this theory about young adults. You want to hear it? Oh, yeah. You may not like it. No. No, you'll love it. All right, so here is my theory about young adults ministry. I think that we as the church, we've missed the boat when it comes to young adults. And it's not necessarily our fault. It's the culture in which we live, especially in the Western culture. Okay, so here is the thing. That from the time you're very little, you're told that you are the most important person in the world. You know, you're told that everything will revolve around you, and that, you know, even banks do it, like advertising all over the place, you know, for the most important person in the world, you. Like everything is actually through this filter about you. And when you're younger and you're in your youth and, you know, your friends are the most important thing, you kind of push all that down. Like it's not really you, it's the circle in which you're in, it's the community that you belong to, it's your tribe that really actually stimulates you and really makes you feel like you can start to define who you are. But something crazy happens. The minute you kind of get into the last few years of high school, you start to get spoken over you and into you that this is the most important time for you. You need to knuckle down. The decisions you make right now are going to impact the rest of your life. And if you don't make the right decisions, then actually you're going to waste something that's there. And so you really need to do it. And then you kind of turn, you know, that 17, 18, you get given a car license, you get told that you're an adult, you get to drink now, but just don't do those two things at once, you know. And all this responsibility is given to you. And no accountability is there. You go to university after high school, and it's you can pick and choose what classes you rock up to. And I mean, there's ramifications around there. You may fail, but you know, no one's really got your back. There's the whole safety net has disappeared. And actually, what that does, that sets you up to start looking at life through your own lens. And whether you believe it or not, every one of us, we step into this space where we start defining that in which we do around how it will impact what we want to see happen for ourselves. That's our motive that sits behind it, right? So, and studies show that this isn't just a theory, this is actually true. Like, you know, when you're in the adolescence and you're growing up, your brain is firing off endorphins and all sorts of things. The reason you do crazy, stupid, dumb things in your teenage years is because you're finding out where those limits and those boundaries are and what you're actually good at and what you're designed to do. And then here's the craziest thing. When you decide in your mind that this is what you can do or this is what you've been built to do, other avenues that were open to you start shutting down one by one, because it's actually going to focus you on one thing that your brain, your endorphins are telling your body to do. Right? Isn't that amazing? Right? So not only does our body do that, but in those formative years, our minds start doing that too. And we start thinking to ourselves, right, what are we going to do? What are the decisions that we've made? And here is the crazy thing. You want to know why there is such a massive drop-off when you go from youth to young adults? You know, I mean, I feel old now, right? Like I turned 39 on Wednesday. But when my wife was going through youth group, her youth group was from a big church in Melbourne. There was, there was 650 youth in the place that was rocking through. By the time she hit young adults and she finished her second year of university, there was 75 people left from that group that once had 650. That's a huge drop-off, right? Statistics in church would actually say that while there's more people that would say, yes, we like Jesus and we know who he is, statistics in church says that we've gone from having 48% of Australia's population saying we would regularly attend church, including Christmas and Easter, right, to less than 11% in 2013 of the Australian population. The population's grown significantly. So the number has actually decreased even more significantly. The largest group of people leaving the church is aged between 18 and 25. You've got to ask yourself, what is going on? And here it is that every one of us has a me switch that's inbuilt in our minds. And the minute we turn 18 or we come of age and we start looking at life through the lens of how is this really going to impact me, that me switch goes from being idle or off into a firm on position. And the goal of young adults ministry has always been in the church of how do we get the Pied Piper along? How do we get more people at our events? How do we actually, we almost hash this thing with youth that seems to work and draw people in. How do we actually re-engage in that? in a culture that is actually, lastminute.com and built on this whole lens? Well, it's really simple. It's actually about helping and equipping people to locate their switch and equipping them to turn it off. Because that's what service does. I would hazard a guess that every single one of you that sits in this room, you serve in some way, shape or form within this community. Right? Am I right? Even if it's a small group thing, even if it's in a cafe, even if it's just rocking up and doing something or some sort of volunteer, you serve and you're probably accountable to someone. Now, you notice that the people that stay, or I've noticed people that stay in young adults ministry are people that end up serving. And it's because of the fact that there is still this idea of discipleship that happens. And what happens in discipleship is someone will tell you, no, God has a vision for your life. It's a kingdom perspective that you can't change. And every time you shift away from that and move to actually trying to focus on yourself, someone comes alongside you and lovingly kicks you in the bum and says, turn your switch off. It may not be in that same language, but that's how it works. And so my challenge to each one of you is whenever you've got friends that have actually stepped away because their me switch is on and church doesn't actually fit their paradigm anymore, God doesn't fit their paradigm, what they desperately need is they need someone to come alongside with that God appointment in their life to be able to say, I want to tell you that God has a plan for you. He has a kingdom perspective for your life that is beyond anything you could ever dream of. And all you need to do is flick your me switch off, and I will help you do that. If you can do that, I'm telling you, you will see numbers come back to this church like never before.